Hey everybody, this is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now live in our Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. It is a free support group, so if you're watching this somewhere else, I encourage you to get onto Facebook, type in Psychic Protection Sanctuary with Maya Zahira, or just Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and find the Facebook group and be sure to join so that in the future you can join us for future Facebook Lives. So as always, at the very beginning of our Facebook Lives, we have some announcements and shout outs and everything, but I want to just jump ahead and announce what our topic is for today's class so that you can anticipate it. So the topic for today is the shadow side of being an empath. The shadow side of being an empath. And I've taught about empaths before, and lots of people teach about empaths. This is different material than usual. So I'm really excited that you're here. And some of these things are probably going to seem obvious when I explain them, but honestly, many of these things I have not seen described in this way anywhere else. So I'm excited, and also thank you for your patience. I had to take 2 months off from our free classes because I moved, and so you might notice that there's a different background. And I got a new chair. It's so comfortable, and it's way more comfortable than the chair that I had before. So I get to like relax back with you guys and go over some cool content. So just a shout out to everybody who's joining live. And as usual, I'd like for you to just share with us where you're joining from. And also a shout out to all of you watching the replay either on Facebook or on YouTube. And I want to just give extra love to my YouTube people. If you haven't already subscribed on there, I would love for you to do that, because if you haven't already noticed, there's a huge amount of free content on the YouTube channel. It's the channel is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. Huge amount of content. But I want to give a shout out to those of you who are on there and liking and commenting, because that helps the algorithm and everything. And I also want to just give some love to the YouTube people and re-explain that when we are in our Facebook group, that this is a Facebook Live. This is I do have notes, but this is unscripted. We're going to be chit-chatting, and mixed in there is some really valuable content. So stick with us, and you're going to learn some really important things, and be patient. I know, I've had some comments on the YouTube videos, people saying that there should be more editing, and that's actually not my style. I am all about authenticity, and you're going to see who I actually am, and with all the ums and clearing of throat or whatever it is that I'm going to do on the video. And so you're seeing the authentic things. So let's jump ahead. Welcome to Christy and Tony, and there's someone else here. I'm not sure who it is. I don't know if we're going to have a big group or not tonight, because we've been off of our schedule for 2 months. Usually we have a nice big group, but the only way to get back into a routine is to jump in. I want to make a couple more announcements, and then we're going to get into our really, really interesting topic. I encourage you to grab pen and paper while I'm going over some announcements, because I think you're going to want to write some of this down. All right, so I already talked about the YouTube channel and our free support group on Facebook, Psychic Protection Sanctuary. If at any time you feel like you want to work with me more deeply, I encourage you to visit my website, which is www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and you can click on Work with Maya, and there's a whole list of different ways that you can work with me, and they range from totally free to very expensive. So you can choose what level of support and where your budget is and everything based on your needs. Okay. All right. Oh, and then two final announcements before we get into our really, really intriguing topic tonight. I mentioned if you would like to work more deeply with me, I actually have a program that's really, really, it's very reasonably priced, and it's called Spiritual Empowerment Academy, and it's a 12-month online program, and I specifically created it not for people who want a quick fix. If you need a quick fix from any spiritual issues, there are other things we can do together, but the Spiritual Empowerment Academy is for people who really want to resolve their energetic or spiritual issues, like they want to completely resolve it for good. So we get into working on clearing out immediate issues, but also getting to root causes, like working through your ancestry, working through your past lives, proper energy maintenance, boundaries, all of that. So there's a ton in that program, and that's on the website under the events tab. And there's one more announcement I'll save till later. Okay, so let's get into our topic for today. Thanks for listening to the spiel. It's just part of what's necessary. So today's topic is the shadow side of being an empath. And as we get into this topic, I know that some of you watching this are empaths. And so I invite you to approach this information with curiosity and self-compassion. And my intent here is not for to like present this information to you so you can beat yourself up or judge yourself or think you are being judged or anything like that. I am a huge advocate for self-knowledge, for like figuring out what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that, so that we can grow and heal and become better people and all of that. So I encourage you to approach this information with curiosity and self-compassion. The thing is that we talk a lot about empaths, and like there's just a lot of talk online and in the spiritual communities about being an empath, and we talk about how it's like both a blessing and a curse for the person because it's really hard being so sensitive. And that's true. Like all of that is true. So we already know that we can go anywhere online and learn all about the struggles of being an empath. And actually, that reminds me, I'm going to post later on in the replay of this and also on YouTube in the description. I'm going to post a link to some further information that I have on being an empath, and it's the replay of my 5-day spiritual empowerment activation for empaths, where we go way deeper into defining what an empath is and giving you tons and tons of tips and suggestions for how to thrive as an empath. So I will make sure that you have direct access to that, so you have a lot more tips and you have a lot of positive directions that you can take with this information. Because here's the thing, I've made a lot of observations, like in the last three or 4 months. I've just kind of sat back and pondered, and I've seen situations with empaths who really were acting out the victim archetype quite a bit, like saying things like, oh, that person is really affecting me because they have bad energy, and so there was this like victim kind of energy underneath that, And I'm not victim bashing or anything like that, but just, it was interesting to observe that, because what I could see from my outside vantage point was that in some ways, if we're going to look at the archetypes of victim versus villain, in some ways the empath was actually playing in the role of villain, but they thought they were the victim. They had no idea that they were doing certain things. And once I go through this list, I think this will make a lot more sense. Okay, so I know we have a couple of my regulars here. It's so good to see you guys. Let's get some interaction going from you guys. And just making sure I can see comments. If you could let us know where you're joining from, I'll give you a shout out. And then also, let's do a little bit of sharing. What do you think, like what's your definition of an empath? How do you define being an empath? What does that mean to you? It could be like your definition for yourself or just your definition in general, okay? So I'm going to wait a second and look at my notes and wait for you guys to comment. I'm wondering if there's going to be comments because you guys are super quiet today. So I'm going to just chit chat for a second. So, because I want to make you guys, I got to make you guys be interactive. It's not going to just be me as a talking head. So while I'm waiting for you guys to comment with where you're joining from and what you think an empath is, I'm going to just chat with my community, with all of you. So if you don't know, I'm located in Tucson, Arizona. I moved to this area almost 2 years ago. It's almost the 2-year anniversary, and I was in the Kansas City area for a long time, but most of the work that I do is online. I love hearing about where everybody is joining from, because it just like, it's really cool hearing about those of you who are overseas and everything. So, you guys are quiet. Let me just see. Sometimes I have to reset my comments. There we go. Sometimes I have to swipe right and left. There we go. Okay. I was like, where are you guys? You're being so quiet. Okay. Christy is joining from Cartersville, Georgia. Tony from Tucson. Mary from, oh my gosh, I need to get my glasses. You know what? I just bought these at the thrift store. So I call them my old lady glasses, because I can't even, if I need them, I'll put them on. They're like readers. I had to break down and get them. Mary is joining from, see, I can't read. I can't even read it. Sook, British Columbia. Now you know my secret. Christy. Oh, Christy is defining being an empath. Feeling things deeply. Yes, that is one definition. Joe is saying hello from Tucson. April, hi, good to see you, from Livingston, Texas. Yeah, so just FYI, there's actually a lot of different kinds of empath, and I'm not going to repeat all of the different kinds because we're going to focus on our main topic. But just know that there's way more types of empath than you may have realized. And after you're done with this, if you haven't watched the 5-day spiritual empowerment activation for empaths, we get all into also defining all of the different kinds of empaths. And I think that'll be really interesting. Christy says, they look cute. Yeah, I didn't care. There's just times when there's really small writing and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I can't even tell. Is that a 9 or an 8? Like, I finally gave in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about being an empath. So yes, it's about feeling things deeply. It's not just feeling your own feelings deeply, but again, not really touching on all of the different kinds of being an empath, but just like our standard commonly known type of empath, defining that is all about when a person can feel other people's emotions, energies. They can feel sometimes even their physical sensations. Like if the person has a headache or a stomach ache, they might feel that. So they could be a physical empath or an emotional empath. Today, most of our topic, we're going to be talking about how emotional and spiritual empaths can feel other people's emotions. Okay. Tony says empaths pick up on and are affected by subtle issues, situations, feelings not noticed by others. And sorry, I feel like someone is putting a feather on the end of my nose. Now, much better. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Tony. Okay, so our main focus again today is going to be on the fact that most standard empaths are picking up on either people's emotions or their energies. So if someone has good energy or bad, like energy that feels good or energy that feels bad, or maybe the person is angry or happy, and then the empath is picking up on that. Okay. All right, so remember, and now that we have more people joining, I'm going to repeat my little reminder at the beginning that we're talking about the shadow side of being an empath. And so if you can relate to any of these, and actually I invite you to be really honest with yourself so that you can know yourself better. But as I'm going through these, I encourage you to just approach it with curiosity and compassion, self-compassion, and understanding that maybe as an empath you may have seen yourself as like being a victim of like all these people's bad energy, when maybe you were really like over embracing that victim energy, or you were even stepping into the villain role while you were telling yourself you were being a victim. So let's get into our list. Grab your pen and paper. As we go, I also invite you to make a comment or give a thumbs up, either way that you want to do it, if you can relate to the shadow aspect that I'm talking about. Okay. So the first one on my list is people pleasing. So a lot of empaths will get into people pleasing kinds of behaviors, and as they do that, they end up losing themselves, like to the point where they don't even know what their own wants and desires are, because they're people pleasing so much. And the reason why they even develop that people pleasing behavior is that they can feel other people's stuff so much that they feel when somebody's not happy, and they might then project that or distort, oh, that person's not happy. They can feel that, and they think the person isn't happy with them. And so they keep trying to adjust their behavior, walk on eggshells, and people please. And just to let you all know that, like, I'm not above all of this stuff. So I'm working on my shadow aspects all the time too. And I definitely, oh my gosh, in my 20s, I was the epitome of that. Like my 20s into my early 30s, that would be me. So give me like a wave or a little feedback or a thumbs up or a yes or that's me. If you can relate to the people pleaser, if you can relate to it now or in the past, if you used to be that way. Okay, so Christy says, definitely people pleasing in the past, not as much now. Yay. Yeah, we're all working on self-awareness and growth. And Joe says, agreed, me too. Yeah. Joe, not as much anymore. Mary, so me. Yep, something to work on. Yep. Tony says, me too, more when I was younger. April, most of my life, I felt like I was expected to people please. Yep. Okay. that was cool. We had several comments come through all at once. Okay, now this next one. So I think that the people-pleasing one, I'm guessing a lot of people were already aware of that, being tied in with being an empath. Some of these others you might not have thought of. The next one on the list is projecting onto others. April says, not no more. That's good. Yeah, so you're not doing that anymore. Awesome. Projecting onto others. So let's talk about what this is. And most of the time when people are projecting, they're so busy projecting that they don't realize that they're projecting. And I've noticed that when I tell somebody that they're projecting onto me, they're so busy projecting that they can't see it. Projection means that a person is taking like whatever their own unresolved issues are, or their own confused thoughts, their own confusion, and projecting that onto another person. And maybe it's like past traumas, past upsets that they've had. They are projecting that onto another person, or maybe the things that they themselves struggle with, they're seeing it in another person who's not even doing that thing. And I see this a lot with empaths, and I think the reason for it is that they have so much confusing energy flowing through them. They're feeling everybody's stuff, and it can be just so overwhelming to be feeling everybody's emotions, thoughts, etc. And so it turns into this like big confusing like circus in their emotions and in their mind that sometimes they can project and distort and think that things are happening that aren't actually happening. This is something that every human does this to some degree. Like if you are alive, you do project sometimes, like because we all have unresolved wounds. And this is not something that just empaths do, but I've just, I've gotten this sense lately that there's all of this talk about empaths, and they're thinking that they're sensitive, but all the other people are doing this stuff. And that, I'm feeling all this bad energy from other people. And meanwhile, they're not aware that they're projecting onto others. Like for example, projecting, oh, that person has really bad energy, or that person is doing this or that, when they're actually not. And that's coming from all of that like empath monkey mind. Okay? Empath monkey mind. I think that's going to be a new term. Okay. Where are we? Joe says, unfortunately, me on this one. Lots when I was younger, trying to be aware of it and not doing it anymore. Yep. Christy definitely worked on this not that long ago. Oh, I think I have some allergies going on. Sorry, you guys. I just feel like I'm going to sneeze. Joe says, agreed, me too. Not as much anymore. Mary says, so me. Tony says, me too, more when I was younger. April says, most of my life I felt like I was expected to people please. Wait, oh, it just brought me all the way back to old comments. Sorry about that, you guys. Okay, now, April says, yes, oh my, yes, I so agree. Mary says, I'm guilty of that, and it ties back to my people pleasing. Yeah, a lot of these qualities end up weaving into each other. Okay, this next one we did talk about in our 5-day spiritual empowerment activation that I've been referring to. If you went through that, gosh, I think I did it like 6 months ago or something. We did talk about this next one, but we're going to talk about it again now. A lot of empaths have a really hard time receiving boundaries. Now, I brought this up to somebody the other day, and they were like, well, what do you mean receiving boundaries? I don't understand. Because we're all talking about like setting boundaries, having good boundaries. But by receiving boundaries, I mean that if someone sets a boundary with you and they communicate a boundary or a need or a desire that they have, or a limitation or whatever, then oftentimes the empath, being so emotionally sensitive, which is a challenge, when the boundary is set, it is received by the empath in such a way that it feels really, really hurtful. Like either one of two things will happen. Like the empath will get super, super hurt, or they'll get super, super defensive. And because also a lot of empaths are not setting good boundaries. So they're not setting good boundaries, and they're also it's like boundaries don't even exist. So that if someone sets a boundary with them, it's like the person is speaking a foreign language. Like, what? And then the empath feels really hurt or angry or defensive and just like pushes back. I've seen this before. Like I'll sit back and observe. I was at a psychic fair where somebody set a very reasonable boundary with somebody, and really all that a boundary is just communicating what your need is. So this person communicated very clearly, I need you to do this, because that person was the empath person was having a negative effect on the boundary setter. The boundary setting person communicated what they needed, and the empath, like I was watching, and she like physically responded as though she had been slapped in the face. And I've actually seen this response quite often when I've set boundaries with spiritual seekers, spiritual leaders. This is actually a big problem in the spiritual community overall, is like total lack of boundaries. But it's very hard with empaths because they're feeling so much stuff. And maybe they became an empath growing up. They had to hone their empath skills, whether they knew that's what was happening or not, in order to stay safe, physically safe, emotionally safe, in an environment where maybe there was abuse or other issues, and so therefore there were no boundaries. And so this can be tied in with the person's upbringing, where they actually developed as an empath as a survival mechanism, and at the same time there were no boundaries. Like their upbringing was boundaryless, so that as an adult they didn't really know how to set boundaries, and if someone sets a boundary with them, it's like they're being slapped in the face. Right, like they have a hard time receiving it. And then you know, the example at the psychic fair that I was mentioning, after the boundary setting person walked away, the empath walked up to me and was playing the victim role. Said, "Did you see what she said to me? Did she, like, she was so rude, blah blah blah." And I said, well, I think she was just setting a very reasonable boundary. Like, it was totally acceptable for her to communicate that boundary. Like, it was, but to the empath, she felt like she had been lashed out at, and she hadn't been yelled at. It was just a simple boundary. Okay. And again, then the empath ends up feeling like that other person is so mean, and the empath ends up feeling like a victim and taking on that victim archetype. So either they take it really hard, they get their feelings hurt, they feel like they've been slapped in the face, they get angry, defensive, or I've noticed another thing is that when the boundary is set, it literally just goes right over the empath's head. Like, they don't even hear it. It's like, wah, 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 wah. Like, they just keep on violating the boundary because, like, they don't even understand that language at all. I know this isn't everybody, but I think it's so prevalent, it's important to bring up. I saw a lot of comments come through. So before I go on to the next one, ooh, the next couple are really, really good. Okay. And it keeps bringing me all the way back. Geez, my comments are really messed up today. I might not be able to, I'm not sure what the heck. Keeps bringing me back to the beginning. Maybe I'll go back. Okay, I will do my best, you guys, so I ask for your forgiveness. I'm going to go with the most recent comments and see if I can scroll back. But when I scroll back, it's taking me all the way back to the beginning, and so it must be a Facebook glitch tonight. Tony says, sometimes I just don't comprehend what is being communicated. Yeah, if that's the case, then in my opinion, I think it's always okay to ask clarifying questions. Like, well, what, can you help me understand what is it that you need from me? Actually, what do you need? What do you need is a really good question. What are you asking for is a really good question. April says, feeling offensive at times, but I have learned to look at it. Oh, shoot. No. Oh, this is driving me crazy. It's not like, but I've learned to look at it for the other person's point of view with love and respect. Then it does not hurt for me, but I had to learn. Oops. Okay, let me see if it will let me go further back. Oh my gosh. Always working on this with my daughter, Christy says. Joe says, my God, yes, on receiving boundaries. Okay. Yeah, I'm having trouble with scrolling. So what I'm going to do, I didn't know that it was going to be doing that because it's never had that issue before. I am going to try my best to stop whatever I'm saying and read comments immediately. So if I didn't read a comment, feel free to retype it, and thank you for your patience as we deal with Facebook land. Okay, next on the list of shadow aspects of being an empath. Absorb energy from others, and I think we already know that. Empaths tend to absorb emotions, feelings, thoughts, energies. But here's the part B. They absorb energies from others and then blame others for having bad energy. And this is something that I was thinking about a lot over the last couple of months because I was seeing so much of it. I was seeing empaths who had really a lot of work to do on their personal energy boundaries. And instead of taking self-responsibility for that, they were instead going, like I would hear several times a day, oh, I can't handle this person because they have like an illness and I can't be around someone that has an illness, or they have bad energy, or they have this problem, or there's something weird attached, or like it was always the other person. And that's a problem. Okay, that is an issue with not taking self-responsibility. So the point is that as empaths, we need to be focusing on all the methods for grounding and strengthening our energy. And hey, you guys can still make comments. Oh, good. Oh, are there more comments coming in? Nope. You guys can still make comments if you want to. I will just do a better job of reading them. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I think I already made my point that there's been a lack of self-responsibility and a lot of focus. Like if you go into like empath support groups on social media, there's all this, oh, I have so much trouble, like this person in my life has such bad energy. And I mean, I have compassion for that. It is really hard to be around difficult energy. I mean, it just is. But if we're constantly like blaming other people for just being who they are, we need to start focusing on managing our own energy better. Okay. All right, so next on the list of shadow aspects is that some empaths lose energy really easily and then blame others for being energy vampires. Like, oh, there's all these energy vampires, and or like just like there's constant complaining about different people who are energy vampires. And again, it's the same thing of lack of self responsibility, because like everybody in the world is not an energy vampire, and the fact is that you might just have really bad energy boundaries yourself. Okay. And actually, and I wonder if this is further in the list. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to cover it now. I have actually seen several examples of people who are empaths who are constantly complaining about everybody being an energy vampire when in the meantime, what I can see is happening is that they themselves are acting as an energy vampire. I had this experience somewhat recently where somebody was complaining about different people about losing their energy and their energy being taken from them. And meanwhile, when I was with this person, like they, and this part's on me, I didn't expect it, so I didn't prepare my energy. But what happened was like they hooked in and sucked my energy, and I got sick really fast. Like, boom, I was down for the count. And again, that it's up to me to work, to continually work on being aware and managing my energy. But I also don't beat myself over the head. Like, I'm not beating myself up over it, because I recognize, oh, I wasn't expecting it from this person. This was a big lesson for me, because I hadn't really thought of this as being an empath issue. You know, we always think of empaths as attracting energy vampires, but there's a whole lot of empaths out there that have really porous energy boundaries, and they lose energy a lot, and so therefore they compensate by hooking in and actually being in the role of energy vampire. So there are a lot of empaths who actually are energy vampires. Now, we tend to think in a very polarized way about this, like this person is an energy vampire and this person isn't. And it's not so simple. Like, yeah, there are some people who just suck energy from everyone, but it's rarely so polarized. A lot of times it's like maybe a person isn't overall an energy vampire, but they do try to source energy from certain people or people in certain roles, in their life. Or if they're especially depleted that day, instead of recovering their own energy and rebuilding their own energy, they will hook into someone else in order to compensate. So it's something that maybe happens with certain people, or just you know, on certain days when they're really struggling as an empath, they will compensate by hooking into somebody. So this whole idea that like empaths are victims of all these energy vampires, well, first of all, they're not victims. I want to say hello to Jessica. Jessica says, hello, I'm beyond late and I'm sorry, but I'm here. I'm glad you're here. And Christy's saying, yep. And I want to say hi to Yvonne. So there's all of these empaths who are not really taking self-responsibility for strengthening and managing their energy, and they're busy pointing their finger at like all those energy vampires out there. Who may very well be energy vampires. And then there's also the issue where sometimes the empath is actually sucking energy from another person or people and at the same time, they're complaining about all of the energy vampires when they themselves are doing that. So I'm going to go back to my previous comments about approaching all of these with curiosity and self-compassion, because if there's a part of you, because I want you to be really honest with yourself, if there's a part of you that resonates with any of the things that we've talked about so far, then it's not about beating yourself up or getting into self-blame, because that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help anyone, but just simply being aware and working on it in the future. And actually, I forgot to mention that after I go through this list, I'm going to go through a little verbal quiz with you guys to help you have more self-awareness, and I'm going to give a few tips for some of these challenges. Okay, so next on the list of shadow aspects of being an empath is that some empaths will mirror the energy and behavior of others. So they will mirror the energy and behavior of others. What this means is if somebody has a certain behavior or a certain mood or a certain energy, then the empath will come along and feel that, and then they will take that on. So they will take that on as their own without discerning that it isn't their own, and then they will mirror that back to the person. So let's say it's behavior. Then they will start to act like the other person, maybe even talk like the other person, take on their behaviors. And let's see, I have some extra notes on this. This happens because they absorb. They have an issue with absorbing other people's energies, so they take on the energy of others. And this is because this is especially an issue with people who do not have a strong sense of self. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone for not having a strong sense of self. That usually is a result of, whatever happened in childhood, or some kinds of abuse or some dysfunctional upbringing, and it's for us to heal and to develop a stronger sense of self. But this mirroring, this taking on other people's energies and behaviors, it does tend to relate back to not having a strong sense of self, and so they shift to match whoever they are with rather than holding their own energy. So they end up taking on the emotions, beliefs, behaviors, mannerisms, even illnesses, or even life challenges of another person, whether it's their partner or their roommate, their spouse, their friend, whoever, and maybe even not a serious relationship like I just listed, but it could be like they're just talking to somebody on the bus, and like immediately they start to take on that person's behavior. So it could be like a perfect stranger. Okay. Jessica says, that's what I do too sometimes. I really dislike it when I'm absorbing negativity and dreaming with my monthly. It's devastating at those times. Yeah, it could be very challenging. Okay, so going on, we just have a few more. I can't wait to go over this one. You guys are going to be so surprised by this one. Oh, dealing, not dreaming. Okay. Thank you. I was trying to figure out. Thanks, Jessica. Okay. Drink time. Yeah, so we're almost done with our list, but this end part of our list is really, really important, and it's like a big mind explosion. Like, it's huge. This, again, everything on this list are things that I've observed, but really in the last handful of months, this is when I got real clarity on this one that I'm going to talk about. And I've never seen anybody who talks about empath issues ever talk about this issue. And that's why I knew I had to come on here and talk about this. So there are a lot of empaths walking around in the world who are genuinely feeling challenged and experiencing major challenges because of everything they're feeling and picking up on. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's very challenging, and there are little things that they end up doing in order to like as coping mechanisms. And so I believe that this next one that I'm gonna say is truly, like, it's not coming from like a place of darkness or not caring. I think that it's coming from the fact that the empath had to take on, like they unconsciously took on this as a coping mechanism. So the next one on the list of shadow aspects that some empaths have, is that they lack empathy. Okay, now your brain probably just did a somersault. Lack empathy. Okay, now let me explain. I'm going to explain this. Okay, so I have encountered this with so many empaths. Especially it came to my attention. Okay, Kat, you can't walk in front of my camera. Go. I love you. Gotta go. All right, thank you for the cameo, the catio. I've encountered this with so many empaths, and especially in the last few months. And when it happened, I was like, okay, we got to deal with the little furry child. Are you okay? We're going to let her show up on the camera because she wants to say hi to all the empaths. Whoa, everything's falling over. Hi. She hates being on camera. Hi. Okay, now you're going to go down on the floor. Ouch, after you scratch me. I love you. Can't make my camera fall down and crawl all over my desk. Okay, does anybody here have fur children? They're adorable, adorably annoying sometimes. Okay, so let's talk about this lack of empathy. So I would be in situations where I would share a deeply, like a very deep challenge with the person. Like I would share like my deepest pain with them. Like this is this like horrible thing that I'm going through. And meanwhile they had, oh, April says, I do. Mary says 3 cats. Jessica, us, 1 dog and 1 cat. Yay. So I would share like my deepest pain, my deepest challenge. And meanwhile, they had just spent an hour talking about how much they've been struggling as an empath, and it's so hard, and like at random times they start crying because they pick up on everybody's energies, blah blah blah. And so I'm listening and I'm like, what, you know, that's genuinely really hard. Like that is really hard when you're struggling with that. And then I go and share like this really intense challenge that I was dealing with, and then the person just says, well, everyone has challenges. Like, I just wouldn't worry about it. And they just totally blew it off. It was like this very anti-compassionate response. And that's just one example. That happened like over the last 6 months. I observed that kind of, it's like shutting the person down, that the person shares some like deep pain with the empath, like as a friend, like I want to share this like thing that I'm going through, and then the empath just like shuts it down, like a big metal door goes boom, like a big metal garage door at like one of those utility buildings, right? It's like boom. And it was like total lack of empathy, like anti-empathy, and it was so shocking, like wow, like no empathy at all. And yet they were just talking about how like, oh, I just can't even make it through a day without crying because I'm picking up on this or that. And so clearly they are an empath, but they're lacking empathy. So I gave it some thought, and I came up with some terminology to help describe. Okay, so this is something I made up, or just a way to describe it. Christy says, it's so weird when that happens. Yeah, like it's very weird where like, yeah, it takes a lot of vulnerability to share like something really challenging that you're going through, or like your deepest pain point. You communicate it to somebody and it's like, so like everybody has problems. It's like, it's just a very cold response and a very non-empathic response. And yeah, also like me being an empath, it was like shocking as well, because as empaths, we're also very sensitive. So I came up with these two definitions, and bear with me as I look at my notes. Again, I'm just naming it these. This is just what I came up with. So, because I was thinking like, okay, well, these are people who truly are empaths. They actually are, like, you know, they are feeling other people's feelings. They fit into the definition of being an empath, but yet when it comes to interactions, they're like lacking in any empathic response, right? So I came up with two phrases. Number one is spiritual empathy, and then number two phrase is emotional or interpersonal. Actually, I think interpersonal is probably better. I'm gonna cross that off. So spiritual empathy and interpersonal empathy, and I'm going to describe each one. Spiritual empathy is just what we've been talking about, the standard spiritual empath. They pick up on physical and emotional feelings, sensations, emotions of others. An unhealed or yet to be healed empath will have trouble managing these energies. A healed empath will use the energies as information and then let it go. So that's a spiritual empath. That's spiritual empathy. And that's what a lot of people are talking about in like spiritual social media groups, about being an empath. That's what they're talking about. But number two, interpersonal empathy. This is what I wrote down for a definition of that. Being able to relate to or imagine or empathize or feel what it must be like to be in another person's shoes and experiencing what they're experiencing. The opposite of this would be brushing off the other person's experience, minimizing or downplaying, like it's not that bad, everyone has challenges, assuming the person's experience is just like yours. Like I've observed a lot of empaths who have a health issue and someone else has a health issue, and I hear this phrase all the time. They'll say something like, well, that's not how it makes me feel. Like that's not how the condition affects me. It's like, and therefore minimizing what the other person's experience is. So assuming the person's experience is just like yours, why are they making a big deal? It's not that bad for me, therefore it shouldn't be bad for them. Okay? And by the way, these examples that I just gave of the lack of interpersonal empathy, those, I don't want to freak anybody out, but those are narcissistic tendencies. When we think that everybody is like us and we project whatever's going on with us onto the other people, all of that, and that lack of empathy, like lack of interpersonal empathy, is a sign of some narcissistic traits. Okay, now when I use that word, which can be triggering for people, narcissistic tendencies, we need to remember not to go into polarized thinking, like someone is an extreme narcissist or they're not at all. We, like every person on the planet, even those who are super healthy and grounded and really integrated, every person has some degree, even if it's small, of narcissistic tendencies. Okay? and some have more than others. And compassionately, I will say, or I will invite you to take on more self-compassion as well. And I'll say that, you know, any narcissistic qualities that might be coming up are usually, in my opinion, in regard to this issue, are usually a result of having to develop coping skills, because that's overstimulation from all of that empath sensitivity was just too hard. So having to come up with those coping skills. So when I say that, like, you know, if someone has a lack of interpersonal empathy, you know, it's not from a place of judgment. Like, when I sat back and really thought about this topic over the last several months, I thought, you know, well, like, why would a person be having that response? But it seems to me that, you know, it truly is challenging being an actual spiritual empath and picking up on so much stuff all the time, that it seems like a pretty logical coping mechanism that someone might take on unconsciously to do the metal garage door slam is what I'm going to call it. Boom. Like, no empathy and no feeling for the person's struggle. Joe says, I sure don't like to admit it, but I have to own this last one too. I'm sure it's coping mechanisms from my childhood that I cringe to recognize it in myself. Yeah, and sometimes it can be like behaviors that were modeled to us from our caretakers when we were growing up, that even though, like, mostly we didn't take on those qualities, there might be a few little threads. And that would be totally understandable, right? Because, like, if you're in a very impressionable state as a child, and the people who you're learning how to be a person from are acting that way, it seems only natural that some of that would be absorbed. And so the key is we become aware of it and we go, oh, I do that sometimes. I need to rethink that. And, like, when you become aware, that's when, like, that's the key, is, like, becoming aware. And so then the next time you catch yourself. Mary says, I find it's also about empath burnout from hearing too much trauma. Yeah, exactly. So it's not only a coping mechanism of, like, feeling the overwhelm, but I didn't mention this, but a lot of empaths will attract people sharing their problems with them. And so, okay, what time is it? All right. So sometimes they just have compassion fatigue, you know, like nurses and other medical professionals sometimes will develop compassion fatigue because they're around it, all that struggle all of the time. So that is something that can happen, right? Having empath burnout from hearing too many tragic stories, and you just can't, you're just like, I just can't do it today. Can't listen. Yeah, so Joe says, oh, and if I was modeling my caretaker's behavior, I'd be a serial killer. Yeah, that's why I emphasized, I use the word, like, threads. There might be, like, a few tiny threads, but definitely you have not taken on the overall behavior, for sure. And I don't know if you've taken on threads, but just you were mentioning some of those things. So Christy says, definitely medical professionals right now. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Now we're going to get into suggestions, and I'm going to do a little verbal quiz with you guys, self-evaluation. And with each of these, I have, like, just a little simple tip, because I don't want to give you this list of, like, here's all these challenges and then bye. Like, I want to get you started on some ways that you can get started on healing these things. And then also just a reminder that later tonight. So if you're here live, I won't get around to it till later tonight. I will post the other empath resource that I mentioned before, which is the 5-day spiritual empowerment activation for empaths and sensitives. It's an online event that I did handful of months ago, and I'll post the replay so that you can learn a broader scope of the challenges and the positives and the strengths and all these interesting things about being an empath, as well as a lot more tips. Okay, so just be patient. I'll post that later tonight. And if you're watching the replay, you can look for it. Like, I'll post it either like in the comments or the description or whatever. And before I go into these suggestions, I want to make an announcement that tonight there is a discussion group on Zoom, actually in 30 minutes. It's going to be in 30 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. And it is for the public. Like, anybody can sign up. You don't have to do an interview for it or anything like that. You don't have to jump through any hoops. And it is just that. It is a discussion group with my guidance. It is a paid activity. It's a paid event. And I don't know how many months we're going to do it, but it's, for the time being, it's happening right after our free Facebook Live. So this will be on Zoom. And if you're interested, then you need to go right now to psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and under the events tab, you'll see the Zoom discussion group, and you need to sign up right away, because otherwise you won't get in. And I'm probably only going to do it for a few months, and it has a sliding scale, so you can choose whichever price that feels right for you. So it's not a tiered program, it's just sliding scale. And I'm probably going to close enrollment forever in about 2 weeks. So it's like, if you are interested in going deeper than the Facebook Lives, then I encourage you to do it. But it's not going to be like a long-term program like my Spiritual Empowerment Academy. We're going to do it for a while, and then we're going to close it down. So just wanted to let you know about that. Chrissy says, yay, because she signed up for that. Tony, oh my, I do all these things at different times, especially when overwhelmed or tired. You brought up a really important thing, Tony. And I was talking to my housemate about this last night, because I was kind of like evaluating some of my triggers and shadows, and we were just chatting together, and I said, you know, when it's on a day when I'm tired, or I've worked a long day, or I'm not feeling well, it's a lot harder to handle the situation in the highest and best way. But when I'm having a day where I feel really uplifted, and I've gotten plenty of rest, and I'm not stressed out, like, then all that shadow stuff isn't coming out. And I think that is just human, right? That's very, very human. And so the only thing that we can do is, like, just keep developing awareness of whatever our shadow aspects are, and then have compassion for yourself if some of it oozes out on a day when you're tired or not feeling well or stressed out. And remember that your best on certain days is going to be different than on other days. Okay, we're going to go through this quiz kind of quickly. Number 1, am I a people pleaser or a doormat? Do I let other people take advantage of me? And you might want to go back and watch this part again. Like, you can rewatch this and take more time to feel more deeply into these questions. If you resonate with this, being honest with yourself, you're going to want to focus. You're going to want to practice getting clear on what you want or need, and then communicating it clearly and calmly to others. That's easier said than done, and you're going to practice it. Practice in your own mind, get clear about what you need or what you want, and then you're going to communicate it clearly to others. And it's going to be really scary at first if you're used to being a people pleaser. You're going to be afraid that other people are going to get mad, but you have to just keep practicing, and over time you'll get better. Okay. Number 2, do I get my feelings hurt when someone sets a boundary with me? Okay, if that's true, next time when it happens, take a breath. Notice your own feelings. Your feelings are valid. Give yourself some self-soothing. You could just like put your hands over your heart. Okay, like do something nurturing for yourself. Massage your feet. Okay. Remind yourself it is healthy and appropriate for others and for you to communicate boundaries. And I'm not talking about someone screaming a boundary. I'm talking about normal communicated boundaries. It's normal and healthy for people to communicate boundaries. And people, here's an important key. People set boundaries because they care about the relationship. And I don't know if you can resonate with this, but I know it's true for me. If I've realized, oh, that person doesn't matter to me anymore, like we're not going to even have a relationship, I just won't even bother to set the boundary. I'll just be like, whatevs, whatevs, and I'll just walk away. But if I care about whatever level of relationship that we have, then I will communicate a boundary, whatever it is, right? So if someone communicates a boundary to you, that actually means that they care about maintaining some level of relationship with you. So remember that. Christy says, I love that. Yes. Okay, number 3, do I ever judge or blame others for having bad energy or for stealing my energy? Okay. And the advice for this is let them be them. You do you, boo. Let them be them. If they're going around having bad energy or whatever, let them be them. You be you. It is your responsibility to develop your people discernment. If you're constantly hanging out with energy vampires, that's on you, boo. I don't usually say boo, but I'm doing it today. Like you need to work on discernment. Okay. And that's something that I teach in Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And if you are in the academy and you don't know where those videos are, I can send them to you. Okay. And B, you need to learn how to manage and strengthen your energy. And that's another thing that I teach in Spiritual Empowerment Academy, a whole process for establishing, maintaining, and managing and grounding your energy. That's on you. You need to learn how to do that. Whether it's through me or whoever, wherever you learn it, it's on you. You got to do that. You do you. Do you tend to mirror or take on the energies or behaviors of others? Okay. If so, it's time to work on strengthening your own sense of self. And here's an exercise. You're going to make a list or a diagram or a vision board or whatever, where you are brainstorming all of the aspects of who am I? What do I believe in? What do I stand for? What do I love? What do I value? How would I describe my personality? What makes me unique? So you're going to do this self-exploration. It could just be writing in your journal, answering all those questions. And if you didn't get all the questions, you can go back and watch the replay. Okay. The more self-aware you are, the more you will be able to maintain your own sense of self, no matter what anyone else around you is doing. Okay. That's a current practice of mine. Is in my line of work, sometimes I deal with haters. I have way more lovers loving, lovely people than haters. But like it tends to tip me over, right? And so my focus is not on Like, all those haters need to stop being haters. Well, there's going to be plenty of haters in the world. Like, that's just, they're not going away. So my focus has been on like really anchoring into my sense of self. So for a different reason, I've been doing this like self-anchoring, self-knowledge kind of exercise. Okay, number 5. Do you sometimes, and be honest, do you sometimes lack emotional empathy? Actually, I decided to change that. Interpersonal, right? Do you sometimes lack interpersonal empathy? If so, in various situations, you're going to practice putting yourself in other people's shoes. And this could be after the fact. It could be like, ooh, you were hanging out with somebody and like, oh, your response kind of lacked interpersonal empathy. So, well, okay, it happens, right? But later you could just be thinking and pondering about, like, imagining what that person's situation is and then practicing having that level of empathy. So if a person tells you a challenge they are having, refrain from projecting your own experience onto it. Take what they say at face value. If they say that it's like super, super hard, or they're in a horrible amount of pain, or whatever it is that they tell you, take it at face value, no minimizing. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what might it be like to be living with their situations? Give people love, give people grace, including yourself. Okay, so that is it for our Facebook Live. If you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask real quick. How are we doing on time? Okay, I've got about 3 minutes. So in closing, I just want to say thank you for being here. Now's a good time to post a question. If you have a quick one, I can answer it. And just remember, if you're watching the replay on YouTube, to come over to Facebook and type in Psychic Protection Sanctuary, choose the Facebook group. And the only way that you can enter into the Facebook group is if you answer all 3 questions in a serious and real manner, so that we know that you're a real person and not a troll. Because if you don't answer those questions, I will not let you in, because we have good energy in our group. Also, we are going to resume having our Facebook Lives, our free Facebook Live classes in this Facebook group every first Monday. So we're going to resume. We're going back onto that schedule. And so every first Monday, you can expect there to be a Facebook Live. You can mark your calendar, and it is at 4 p.m. Pacific. So just adjust to your time zone. And also, if you're on YouTube, you can expect that at the beginning of every month, there's going to be a new Facebook Live uploaded. Okay. And then if you would like more information on all the work that I do, and there's and access to some of the free offerings, more of the free offerings, you can go to my website, which is www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com to learn more. And of course, on the website, you can sign up for the email list. And I send out an email usually just once a week, usually just once a week. And when you sign up for the email, I send you a couple of free gifts. And one of them is an empath quiz, and another one is a quiz to find out if you might be under psychic attack or vulnerable to psychic attack. Mary says, thank you for your time. You're very welcome. I'm glad to see you here. April says, thank you for your beautiful advice. Joe says, thanks as always, Maya. Blessings to all of you. I'm going to go log on to Zoom for our discussion group. If you're interested in joining us, that discussion group is all about psychic protection and psychic attack. So it's like a pretty intense topics. And if that's something that you have struggled with and that you want to know more about, then I encourage you to check that out. Again, you can find it on my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and under the events tab. If the enrollment is still open, you'll see the the Zoom discussion group listed there under the events tab. If it's not there, enrollment is closed and it's gone bye-bye, because I'm going to close enrollment in a couple of weeks. Just for time reference, we're at the beginning of September right now of 2021. So if you're watching this way in the future, that group will probably be long gone, because this is a short-term group. So I think that is it. Betty Jo says, love you. Oh, I didn't know you were on here with us today. Michelle, hi Michelle. Okay, I'm going to sign off and get on to Zoom and get ready for our really juicy topics in the Zoom discussion. Have a beautiful, blessed evening and rest of the week. I will see you in the Facebook group, and I encourage you to participate in the daily discussions. Every Tuesday, we have Tuesday Tips and Advice with Maya, and you can ask me questions. And the first Monday of every month, we have this free Facebook Live class. All my love.